Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Low Budget Review Show. I am your host, Eric Smith, and today we're doing a retro review because I'm talking about Goblins by Vince Courtney. This is from Pinnacle Horror. Look at that cover. I'm trying to keep my light off of it. This is from 1994, I believe. Yes, it is. And in this book, we've got the Martin family. And Dan Martin is a filmmaker. He takes his wife and adopted son to Ireland to scout a location. His pregnant wife. Some crazy shit happens in Ireland. They come back to the United States. Some crazy weird shit's happening. And, well, you know what? I'm going to read the back cover copy because I'm not doing very well with my little nutshell thing. So, it says, "The fear is growing. From the moment he saw the ancient castle rising out of the picturesque Scottish countryside," damn it, I said Ireland, Scotland, filmmaker Dan Martin knew he'd found the ideal location for his vampire horror movie, and nothing could make him leave, not the eerie legends of soul-stealing beasts of the night, nor a bizarre series of freak accidents, not even his pregnant wife's tragic miscarriage. The terror is born. Except that now there is another fetus growing in Vicky's womb. But little Darian is not going to be a normal baby. The Martins' adopted 5-year-old son, Marty, will soon find that out. In fact, Marty will soon know exactly what his new brother, really is. Goblins. There you go. That's what it says. So, Scotland, not Ireland. I apologize. Right off the bat, for the too long didn't watch crowd, I'm going to go ahead and tell you I gave this 4 out of 5. I really liked this. There are a number of reasons. First of all, it's just crazy. Excuse me. There's so much going on in this book. We start with a tape recording of an interview between a doctor and a patient in a mental hospital, and he's talking about his experience in World War II and this little guy with a red hat that he saw on the battlefield doing something, and then he's in this mental hospital because he apparently killed his wife and 2 children. But then the recording that we're listening to, this is all like the cold open, is just turned off because the cops are talking to the doctor because the patient has escaped. And then all of a sudden we're with the Martin family. We're in Scotland, location scouting for this vampire film that Dan Martin is making. And so, and it's just weird stuff is happening. And little Marty is having these horrible nightmares. What's real, what isn't, about his stepfather who, is this a spoiler? I don't know. Basically, he was molested by his stepfather, and his stepfather said that if he told anybody, he'd kill him. Even if he died first, he'd come back from the dead and kill him. So this is all up in Marty's head, messing with him. And there are a lot of nightmare sequences in this book. But then, like, they leave after some weird stuff happens, crazy stuff. Not going to get into it. They leave Ireland. They go back to the United States. They live in Florida. And Dan eventually goes back to film. And more nightmare stuff, but like some stuff has been sort of resolved and we're never really going to hear it again. But then there's new stuff happening, and we meet Vicky, I believe Vicky's Dan's wife's name. She's the pregnant woman. We meet her sister Val and her 2 kids, Kurt and Kyle. Whew. There's too many K's. Kids, Kurt, and Kyle. So those characters are introduced. And there's some other characters here and there. and just weird stuff happening. And then there's the miscarriage and the miracle that there's another fetus, and then the baby's born, and it's Darian, and what's going on? Is Marty just paranoid? All sorts of craziness in this book. And it's so, the time jumps, I don't know if that's the best way to put it, because it doesn't jump back and forth in time. It's like once they get back from Scotland, almost said Ireland again. Once they get back from Scotland, of course it's Scotland. It's border folklore stuff. But once they're back, we kind of jump ahead a little bit, and then like once Darian's born, it kind of jumps ahead a little bit. So it's an interesting pace to the story. It's an interesting flow to the story. There's so much crazy stuff going on. But once we get to it, and I don't think I'm giving anything away when I say that eventually, at its core, we're looking at a killer baby story. Yeah, that's my kind of stuff. Not even a killer toddler. This is a 5-month-old killer baby. So, what else is there to say? I don't know. 4 out of 5. I really had a blast with this. Is it the greatest horror novel ever written? No. And as a matter of fact, I looked at, when I posted on Facebook that I was reading this, Lynn Hansen, the fantastic cover artist, apparently is friends with Vincent Courtney, because she responded to my post showing this book and said, like, hey, Vincent Courtney, a blast from the past. So I looked at his Facebook page, and apparently there's a new edition of this book called Something is Wrong with the Baby, and it says that it's revised. So I'm going to have to pick that up and read it and see what revisions have been made. I think it'll be interesting. I don't know if it's updated, like the time frame is updated, or just certain things are changed. And Vincent Courtney has an amazing way with words. There are some crazy sentences. Descriptions of things. Like, and this isn't an actual one from the book, but, like the clouds vomited lightning. That kind of thing. Let's see. A chirping nest of people. I don't want to sit here and, well, actually I do want to sit here and just read this book while the camera's on. I don't care. I just want to read it again. But anyway, just the way Vincent Courtney will describe certain things is wild, and it's just so much fun. So I really, really liked this. Yeah, and this is part of my October, although I don't think I'm going to get that much read, but I'm doing like a Paperbacks from Hell kind of old pulpy horror thing for October. You'll see. Well, okay. Things kind of went off the rails. I started with, this is a review for this book. Why am I going into other stuff? I started with All Hallows by Christopher Golden. First book I read in October. And then I had to read the Marvel Zombies novel, Marvel Zombies The Hunger, because I've been waiting for that for almost a year. I wasn't going to wait to read that. So I was a little bit late getting into my reading pulpy stuff. But anyway, that's all neither here nor there. And by the time you see this, I think it'll be December. Late November, December, because I have so many reviews to post. But anyway, that's all meaningless to this. Goblins, Vincent Courtney, 4 out of 5 stars. A hell of a good time. I'd say if you can't find a copy of this, pick up the new version. Although I can't recommend it because I haven't actually read it, but I can recommend this. Loved it. Had such a good time. All right. Let's see. Question for this video. There has been sort of this rise of folk horror over the past few years. Maybe it's just a rise of the prominence of folk horror over the past few years. It's always been around, but it seems to be there's a lot of people talking about it lately. Some of that I think might have to do with films like those from A24, but there's also a lot of authors writing folk horror now. It seems, again, my impression, it's more prevalent. And this book falls into that category. Despite its incredibly pulpy nature, it is at its heart folk horror. So, I guess my question for this video is, what are your thoughts on folk horror? Do you have any thoughts on folk horror? Do you read folk horror? Do you like folk horror? I'm saying folk a lot. Now, as with most subgenres of horror, for me, it's not something I'm necessarily going to seek out, but it's also not something I'm going to avoid. It's going to come down to who's writing it, how well it is written, how interesting it is. I guess Adam Neville, a lot of his stuff is folk horror, quite a bit of it. I don't know the ratio of his folk horror versus non-folk horror, but I just recently read Cunning Folk, which is definitely a folk horror. I think The Ritual probably falls under that umbrella, and it's for those who don't know, I am by no means an expert, but essentially it's horror based in folklore. I mean, that's my understanding of it. So for me, as always, depends on the writer, depends on the story. As long as I'm entertained, then I have no problem with it. But I do know there are people that will, that's what they want to see. Their favorite subgenre of horror is folk horror. So what about you? Have you even heard of it? What do you think of it? Have you read any? What's your favorite? Does it not interest you? I mean, some of it can be very folk tale feeling, as in the writing style feels like old folk stories, folk tales, whatever. But also, obviously, can be incredibly pulpy and fun. So let me know if that question even makes sense. Let me know in the comments below. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections, put those in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post a spoiler warning. We try to be polite here at the Low Budget Review Show. Please like, share, and subscribe, all the usual YouTube stuff. And if you care to follow me on other social media, my Twitter is @Ronan5757. My Instagram, where I post pictures of books, comic books, board games, and fuzzy animals, is EricSmith5757. And if you're on Blue Sky, I am @ELSmith. That's all I have for you. This has been the Low Budget Review Show. I have been Eric Smith. And until next time, read more books.